What kind of manager would Albert Pujols be if the Halos decided to ask him to lead this team?
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. If Albert Pujols becomes the manager of the Angels, what kind of manager will he be for this current version of the Angels? We're going to look at three things: what the players have said about him, what his teams have done under his watch, and what the stats say about his managerial style. And then we're going to answer the question, would Albert work with this current Angels roster? And if not, what would need to change about this current roster? Before we get there, we want to thank our sponsor, Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase.
Happy Thursday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
We're talking Angels baseball with you every Monday through Friday, even in the off season. So make sure that you are subscribed wherever you listen or wherever you watch. We want you to be here talking Angels baseball with us every single weekday, and we would love to have you as part of the conversation. Jump into the comments on YouTube. By the way, we want to hear from you for the roster report cards. We're getting ready to do those soon, and we want to hear your grades for the 2025 roster. So hit that link in the episode description. You'll be able to grade each one of the players, and then we'll tally it up, and we'll share that with you soon on Locked On Angels.
Johnny, because the Angels are reportedly considering Albert Pujols as manager, although if you talk to Albert, like we heard yesterday, he's like, nobody's reached out. So I don't know if he's playing coy or if the Angels just haven't done a thing. Right?
I'm not being coy.
What kind of manager would Albert be, though, is the question. And if you asked around the league, man, there's a lot of players that have interacted with Albert Pujols in his playing career and now that he's not playing anymore, and they gave some really great reviews of Albert. Juan Soto is a Dominican-born player, obviously plays for the Mets, and he said, everybody knows Albert. He's like a dad for us. You look at his numbers while he was playing, all those numbers are MVP numbers almost every single year. It's amazing what he's done, how many doors has been opened for Latin players, Dominican players, and everybody else. And then Nelson Cruz had some really good things to say about Albert. He's another Dominican-born player, and he said not only the work and the numbers that he put on the field, but all the great work he's put in outside the field through his foundation, the way he carries himself. He's been an ambassador for the game for many years, represents us well as Latins, especially Dominicans. We're definitely really proud of him. He's an example to follow, a mentor for most of us, and just a great human being. If you know him, he's a great guy to be around.
Yeah, then we even heard from Carlos Correa. Yuck. But said this. He said he was my favorite player growing up. I wore number 5 when I was playing Little League because of him. He's been my favorite hitter to watch ever since I can remember watching baseball. It makes me happy that he's such a great human being. He's such an inspiration for many people. You want to see people like that succeed.
Johnny, just totally off topic for a moment, but do you know why Carlos Correa didn't wear number 5 for the Astros in the major leagues?
Who was wearing it at the time?
Well, it's retired. Jeff Bagwell.
Oh, it's Bagwell.
That's why he couldn't have it. Yeah.
That's
so
right.
Fun fact. I know it's Locked On Angels, but there you go. You're welcome.
That's fair. That's fair. Now, when Albert managed the Dominican League during the 2024-25 season, his players shared similar feelings about Albert Pujols. They shared that he demands excellence from his players. Hey, where have I heard the word excellence before? Oh, we said it about 15,000 times when we had this conversation last week, didn't we, Mike?
Yep.
They feel he's owed that because of how he played with excellence. His players said that he has a professionalism about him. There isn't any silliness with Albert while he's working and leading. Players said that helped them focus on the game and the job they were supposed to do. And lastly, his players said Albert brought a quiet certainty to the game every day. That's how I want to be described, with a quiet certainty. Yeah, right. They knew that he could count, that they could count on him, and they were confident in his decisions that he would make on the field. So first question, and it's really great to hear from players around the league, some of the players that he managed on that Dominican team. Mike, is there any question in terms of the character of Albert Pujols?
I don't really think so. I haven't heard anything. I know that he had a divorce, I believe. I think that was the only like if you put that in a bad category, I think that was the only thing that you could say is like not great in his history.
And there's like a situation where his ex-wife had cancer while this divorce was going on. And so I think that, who knows, really? I mean, we're on the outside looking in. There's probably more to it than that. But the optics didn't look great, as far as how he carries himself now and what he's done, for the Angels and for the Dominican League team that he coached. And honestly, what he's been able to do with the young guys who have come in through international free agency. Having Albert has been a huge asset to the Angels. And one of the ways that they've used him is to work with those players, in the Dominican League where the Angels have a lot of their players playing right now.
Yeah, and that could benefit the Angels big time. But back to his character, John, he just had really carried himself well, I thought, during his career. There's no connection to any sort of performance-enhancing drugs with Albert Pujols, and he put up some really great numbers. And even when he played and he left the Angels and went to the Dodgers and then he went to the Cardinals, that Dodgers run, man, he really inspired that young group of players, right? They were excited to play with him. And then he went to the Cardinals and had a pretty solid season there. And so he's somebody who, at least from a perspective that we have, and we haven't interacted with him, seems like he carries himself really well, has good integrity, great character. I don't think that there was ever a question in my judgment of Albert's character and the type of human that we're getting. Was there any question from you?
No, I don't think so. And they talked about his foundation. I think it was Nelson Cruz talking about, working with special needs children and supporting them. And, we have some good friends of our own who work with special needs kids. And so that's an important aspect to what he's doing outside the game. And I think really, I don't know, I think that's a humble thing to do, especially when you're certified future Hall of Famer and you choose to work in an area with children who need resources and need help, and you're supporting that. I think that's really fantastic. I think some of the things that come to mind, I know that in 2012, there was that locker room blow up between him and Torrey Hunter. So that makes you kind of consider things. They said that everything's water under the bridge with the Angels and Perry Minasian. That's another question I have, because Perry was the one to let him go. But to be fair, Albert was also the one who didn't want to platoon with Jared Walsh, but then he goes to the Dodgers and the Cardinals and is grateful to platoon against lefties, which it's like, man, if you had done that for us, it would have been a totally different season, right? Like, imagine sitting Walshy against lefties and then having him up there against righties and splitting that time with Albert Pujols. Man, that would have been a much different look for that 2021 season. So all that to say, that's game stuff, right? I think when you zoom out and look at the personhood, the character of Albert Pujols, there isn't much that makes you go, I don't know about that, except maybe, the divorce thing. Again, I don't know more about those circumstances than maybe any of us know regarding those circumstances. But how does hearing about what the players say shape your ideas or feelings or thoughts about what he might be like as the next manager? What do you say?
I like what they said, but full vulnerability, John, it felt kind of like padded answers, right? It felt kind of like he demands excellence. There's a professionalism about him. There's not much silliness. And when he's focused on the game, he has this quiet certainty about him, and that helps us to be focused. And so, okay. Right. Like if that's who he is, that would be great. Is it because he is this king from where he comes from, right? Like he's a Dominican and he is going to be a Hall of Famer. And maybe these young players look at him as like, oh dude, he's the sage, right? He's the king and we want to be like him. And so was there a bit of an awe about Albert Pujols, and would he be able to carry that with Major League Baseball players from around the world and the United States if he became a manager like for the Angels? Like, is there a different dynamic there? Those would be the questions that I would be concerned about. And quite honestly, John, I would love to hear if Albert has a game plan, a strategy. Like if he was going to be hired as the manager, I would want to know his 3 and 5 year plan. Obviously, I think the Angels have to give a 3 and 5 year plan to Albert, but I would want to know like, hey, what do you want to achieve as a manager? What kind of players do you want around here in 3 years and in 5 years? What these phrases that these players shared they're really good. They just don't give me much tangible. They don't give me much to run with when it comes to like what type of manager he'll be on the field for the Angels, right?
Yo, I hear that. It's less strategy and more about what he brings to a team. But
yeah.
I'll push back on that thought and ask you this. You're 21 years old. You're working your way up through baseball, and you get to play on Albert Pujols' team. What are you going to say?
I'm going to say yes. Yeah. I'm going to have great statements to say, even if I didn't fully believe it. I think I'd probably be like, but you know what? It's Albert.
you're going to say things like quiet certainty. Right. Yeah. And so, that's the pushback I have there is what's there to say when you're a young guy in awe and playing baseball for him. I mean, look, I hear what you're saying. It didn't necessarily point to his strategy on the field, but that's something that we can kind of untangle in our next segment. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now, we're looking at the stats of the team that Albert managed in the Dominican League. What does that say about his managerial style? What can we glean and unpack from his managerial style based on the numbers? We'll get into that conversation coming right up.
Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra and Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Go Long. It isn't just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual-action formula. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. And the process is really simple. You connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online. And if you're prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your front door. So if you're ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom, head to Rougiette.com and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com, Rougiette.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. And if you use our promo code, they'll know that you were sent from Locked On Angels.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Again, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us there. Whether you're watching on YouTube or on your smart TV, you can find us there as well. But the most important thing is that we want you to be part of today's conversation. And the best way to do that is hopping over to YouTube, finding today's show on our channel at Locked On Angels. Hit that like and subscribe button while you're there, and then jump into the comments, because that's the best place to get in touch with Mike and I. You can also hit us up on social media at Super Halo Bros, at Locked On Angels, wherever you social your medias, and we'd love to hear from you and get your thoughts on today's discussion regarding Albert Pujols.
Yeah, we heard from the players, Johnny, in the first segment. Now, let's look at the stats. What kind of managing style would Albert bring to the Angels based upon the stats that we're seeing? Is he a slug guy? Is he a contact guy? Is he a stolen base guy? Is he a station-to-station guy? And what about those strikeouts? Like, will there be a difference with Albert Pujols as manager and the strikeouts? So in order to answer those questions, we're going to look at the stats from the team that he managed in 2024, 2025 in the Dominican Winter Leagues and discover maybe what the stats might say about Albert Pujols. So John, why don't you start us with the first thought?
Yeah, let's see what we found here, Mike. First, his team did win the Dominican Winter League championship. It was the first championship win in 9 years for his team. They had 49 regular season games and then 15 playoff round robin style for the top 4 teams. This was followed by a best of 7 series for the championship. Now listen to this. Albert's team went 24-25 in the regular season, but then they went 10-5 in the playoffs, and then they won the 7-game series 4-3.
So essentially they were the 2014 Kansas City Royals, or maybe the 2015 Kansas City Royals, right? Where they sneak into the playoffs and then they blow everybody out of the water.
Go on a run,
yeah. So again, mediocre regular season that led to a great playoff run and a championship. In fact, the best team in the regular season was the worst team in the round robin championships during that season just a year ago. Let's look at the offensive stats first, John. Albert's team averaged 4.49 runs per game in the regular season. That was good for 4 out of 7 teams in the league. They were third in hits with 407 and 1,634 at-bats. They were fourth in home runs. Get this. They were bottom 3 in strikeouts. They led the league in walks. They had a team batting average of 249, which was good for second in the league. Their on-base percentage was 332, which was good for second in the league. And they had a total team OPS of 684, which was good for third in the league. And another good stat, they were third in the league in stolen bases, Johnny.
All right. I like that stuff because, number one, even though those numbers aren't like what you would expect at the MLB level, a 684 OPS across the team, what I think is key there is where they rank among the 7 teams, right? The emphasis they're placing on bottom 3 in strikeouts, second in the league in on-base percentage, third in the league for OPS, third in the league for stolen bases. I think that bodes well for the kind of team that Albert was running in the Dominican League. On the pitching side, Mike, they were the third best in the league in team ERA with a 4.11 ERA. They were second to last in runs allowed. They had a team whip, walks and hits per innings pitch, of 1.366, which was fourth in the league. Second in the league with 3.4 walks per 9. You like to see that. Second to last in the league in Ks per 9 at 7. They had a 2.02 strike to walk ratio, which was bottom 3 in the league.
And then on the defensive side, because we need some help defensively, Ron Wash wasn't able to solve that problem for us, right? This team, not good news. They were the worst fielding percentage team in the league at 966. They were second to last in caught stealing percentage at 18%, which meant that teams could really steal some bags off of their catcher and their pitcher. And they were second to last in double plays turn. Well, that's because they didn't have Jose Soriano on that team, because that guy was phenomenal this year. So looking at these numbers, and again, John, it's just a quick glimpse because this is really all that we have from that league and from that season. Looking at these numbers, what kind of conclusions can we draw about Albert's managerial style?
I think he runs a very old school style. And when I say old school, I mean not the 2020s and not the late 2010s, right? 17, 18, 19, right? I think what he's running here is the kind of ball that is exactly what we need. Remember our discussion yesterday, Mike, where the Angels were, top 5 in on-base percentage, top 5 in strikeouts, in terms of hitting strikeouts, right? They're in the bottom of the league at that. They're not way up at the top with a ton of strikeouts. Then it goes out the window once Perry Minasian arrives. I think that these are hopeful. Now, you have to understand the kind of players he's working with as well, and the makeup of that roster and the construction of that roster. But I think at the very least, you can understand here what Albert is emphasizing. Hey, get on base, steal those bags, right? Hit for contact, hit for average, that sort of thing. And even fourth and home runs, seeing that and going, okay, they're not the top of the league, but they're also not the bottom of the league. They're right there in the middle. I don't know. I feel kind of good about the fact that they're in the middle of the league, because it goes to show with the Angels, when you're at the top of the league in home runs, doesn't do very much for you. So at the end of the day, I really think that Albert, and according to the offensive stats, really emphasize the things that the Angels are missing. And it makes you wonder if he would bring that to the Halos should he become the manager, right?
You know what I like about these stats, John, is he's obviously working with a variety of different players and different ages, but most of them are probably on the younger side.
Yeah.
And what he emphasized was boring fundamental baseball. That's what I see in these stats, boring fundamental baseball. Looking at the pitching side of things, there are some numbers that make me go, ooh, that doesn't look great. But what I like is the second in the league in 3.4 walks per 9. So they're not giving so many free passes, and they're not necessarily striking out a lot of guys, but they were getting guys out because they had the third best ERA. They were second to last in runs allowed. And so that was a benefit to their team. And then walks and hits per innings pitch, which is my favorite stat, whip 1.3. So they were fourth in the league, which was kind of in the middle. I really like these stats. I really like what I see. Again, I think it feels a bit old school. And what happens often with some of these longtime players is they're going to bring in some of that old school mentality, because remember, there's nothing new under the sun, right? Like what was cool then is going to come back soon. And I think that we're going to start seeing, especially if we see some retired players become coaches and managers like a Torrey Hunter, like an Albert Pujols, then I think we're going to start seeing some of the old school baseball, which I would love to see it become the new school baseball. Boring, fundamental baseball is something the Angels haven't played for a really long time. And then when they did have some of those good offensive stats, they didn't have a good pitching staff. And it looked like Albert was able, as a manager, to balance both. The hitting was enough to get them over the line, and the pitching didn't allow them to get too far behind. They were able to get out of innings. They were able to not give free passes, something the Angels just haven't been able to do the last few years.
Yeah. And the other part of the pitching side is it comes down to the skill of the players on the mound, right? And so what you really have to do here on the pitching side is try to understand, hey, what was Albert good at in terms of managing this pitching staff? Who did he go to? Did he go to the right guys in the right moments? And so when you think about, third best team in the league with team ERA, even though it's 4.11, maybe that indicates that he was smart about the matchups that he was making, the guys he would turn to in certain situations and facing certain parts of the order. That might be reading into it too much, but what was your thought there?
Let's read into it, because they were 10-5 in the round robin playoff tournament.
True. Yeah.
So they were the second best team. The first best team was 11-4. And then they beat that team in 7 games. Yeah. You don't go 10-5 and then win a 7-game series because you're not making good, solid bullpen decisions. You're making solid bullpen decisions to get outs in innings that you desperately need. And so I think the playoff numbers and the championship game numbers, at least how they won and how many times they won, I think that says a lot about what he could potentially bring to the Angels, that he is somebody that has a keen awareness for what needs to happen in this moment. And remember, they're young guys. And so he's somebody that made a decision for them instead of having them maybe talk themselves into staying in the game. Albert, I would guess, I'm guessing, right? We're reading into it. I would guess that Albert was like, I'm making a decision right now. This is what we need to do so that we can end up winning this game.
Quiet certainty, Michael. That's the epitome of that right there. And I think that's kind of demonstrated in the numbers. So it'll be interesting to see how he manages should he get this job.
There is nothing like catching a baseball game live, but getting the tickets can be really tough, especially playoff tickets. You have queues and login screens and surprise fees. It takes all the fun out of it. So that's why I love using Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, it's easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You're always going to get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all the fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. And honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than all the other ways that you can buy tickets. Download the Game Time app right now, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. There are some terms that do apply. Again, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. Download Game Time today.
After hearing all the good quotes and seeing the numbers and kind of getting our thoughts on all of that together, we're wondering, would Albert Pujols work for this current version of the Halos roster? Now, we know there's a lot to do in the offseason, and, that's all TBD on how this team is going to be built. But we know that we're going to have the stalwarts, right? We're going to have Zach Neto. We're going to have Nolan Schanuel. We're going to have Mike Trout. We're going to have Soriano and Kikuchi and Detmers in the rotation. We're going to have some bullpen guys that are sure to be in this bullpen, right? We'll see Brock Burke again. Hopefully we'll see Ben Joyce at the beginning of the season. So that kind of stuff is all for sure. But would he be the right fit for this Halo team? And could he even work with this Halo team? What are your thoughts, Mike?
Well, let's start with Zach Neto. I think that the stats show us that Albert is going to be more of a boring, fundamental, old school baseball type of manager. Obviously, small sample size. I think Zach Neto will thrive in that, John. And here's why. Zach is that type of player. Zach's very smart and he has a great awareness on the field. He's somebody that will throw to third to get the runner out. We've seen him do that multiple times, right? We've also seen him in the third hole lay down a bunt, and it wasn't a call. It was something that he decided to do. We've also seen him in the leadoff spot know when he can unload and hit a home run. He's somebody that makes contact when necessary. So I think that this could be a really good thing for a guy like Zach Neto. I also think it could be a really good thing for a guy like Nolan Schanuel, because if it's more of a contact heavy team, that will benefit Nolan Schanuel. I was watching the Dodgers Phillies yesterday and watching Brandon Marsh thrive with the Phillies, hit 280 this last season in the regular season. Thought to myself, man, him in that lineup with Nolan Schanuel would be a perfect 1-2 punch, because they're contact first kind of guys. Now, year before, Brandon Marsh hit 16 home runs, but his batting average was around 257. So I think he's more of a contact guy. And when he makes contact, his on-base percentage goes up. I think he's drawing a bit more walks and has a better eye for the strike zone. That seems to be the vein that Nolan Schanuel is going to operate in as well. And I think he needs a manager that isn't going to ask him to muscle up and try to crush the ball. I think he's going to needs a manager that's going to say, I want you to spray it all over the field. And the best version of Nolan Schanuel is when he pokes that ball into left center, right? Yeah. Because you get a runner at second base, that runner's more than likely going to score. And I think with Albert, they're going to score because he's going to push to take the extra base. Let me go back to the Dodgers-Phillies game again last night. Bryce Harper going first to third, and what happened? The ball got away. He scored. Runner goes to third. Then Brandon Marsh, sacrifice fly. That's the type of ball that the Angels just haven't been playing. They had moments, right? Glimpses, the Kansas City game that you and I've mentioned before. There were some games earlier in the year where it was like, I really like this team. This is a fun team to watch, right? And then it disappeared. The quiet certainty, I think, will be very perfect for a Zach Neto and a Nolan Schanuel, because they're going to know what to expect. They're going to know that there's a strategy. And who else was quiet and certain while they sat on the Angels bench as the manager? Yes, Mike Scioscia. And then every once in a while, he'd go, "Where was that, Blue?" Right?
You know, that sound that you people heard on the audio side on my microphone, that was me leaning over it like Scioscia used to do. What was that?
Yeah. Give me your thoughts, John. What do you think?
You know, Mike, I feel like this will affirm what we discussed last week when we were talking about Perry Minasian and the next manager and Arte Moreno wanting a Torrey Hunter or an Albert Pujols, the glory days of the Angels, right? He's going to want one of those guys with past glory. And I am still seeing thoughts on social media and all over the place about how having somebody like that is fool's gold, right? And it's just going to hype up the Halo honks and all that stuff. I disagree. I just disagree fundamentally, because yes, it is all of those things that Arte wants, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad decision, right? Like, I don't think bringing in an Albert Pujols or a Torrey Hunter is going to be a bad decision. And if Arte's behind that, Arte's going to get what he wants. I also think that matters because I don't think Perry's going to get what he wants, Mike. And if this team, as constructed, continues to do what Perry Minasian has been pushing in terms of philosophy and hitting approach at the plate, I think he loses that battle. I just thought of the other guys. You lose that 9 times out of 10, right? Lion versus tuna.
Is that how you saw this going?
Yeah. I think Albert Pujols is the tuna, right? And he wins that battle 9 times out of 10. And what I'm saying is, if Arte makes this decision, it's like I said last week, Perry becomes the guy who goes and makes the signings that they need, right? I don't think he has the input. I don't think he has the sway he used to. Yes, he's got one more year. Yes, he didn't get fired, but that would have been very inconvenient to fire your GM and your manager and then have to do a search for both, because one doesn't happen until the other happens. So honestly, Mike, I think he's the gopher. I think he's going to go on the coffee runs and he's going to go get the players that Arte and Albert want. Yeah. And you laugh, but I think that's the way it's going to go.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking of a reference to Hamilton. I feel like Perry Minasian is Aaron Burr and Albert Pujols is going to be is going to be Hamilton, right? And Perry Minasian is out singing, I want to be in the room where it happens, because the decision-making that's going to be taking place between Arte and Albert, they're going to open the door and go, all right, Perry, here's what we want to do, right? And we've heard our everydayers say this pretty often, that, when the Angels did something well this year, it was like, well, a broken clock is right at least twice a day, right?
A blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then. Yeah.
So, John, is this Arte Moreno's broken clock moment? Is this the blind squirrel moment that despite himself, if he makes the decision for Albert, is it your contention that this actually could be a really good thing, even though it does check all the crazy Halo honky boxes and fool's gold boxes?
Yeah, I think that this is his broken clock moment, and we're due for one, Mike. We're due for a broken clock is right twice a day moment. We're due for a blind squirrel finds an acorn every now and then, right? And so all that to say, you know what? It's an Arte move, and I think that we need an Arte move at this point. And the reason I say that is not because I think what Arte's trying to do here is, let's get all the fans here with Albert Pujols as the manager. No, I think he's going to be a very good manager. I think it's also going to mean that Albert will have influence over Arte's decisions, and I think it boxes Perry Minasian out. Look, we talked about it yesterday. No amount of Jeremy Reed as the hitting coach preaching patience and on-base percentage and walks at the plate was going to help this team in 21 and 22 because the roster, as constructed, didn't fit that mold. Mike, I'm concerned that the roster, as constructed, still doesn't fit that mold. And so two things are going to have to happen. We're going to have to see Logan O'Hoppe, who's still young, change his approach at the plate and take things the other way. We've seen him do it before, but it's also going to mean he's going to have to cut down on the strikeouts. Taylor Ward, I know that he can be a high strikeout guy. He can be a power guy. But you know what the thing is with him? He's not swinging and missing on strikeouts. He's watching them, right? Yeah. Because he's looking for that pitch that he can crush, and he's not finding it. Yeah. So in some ways, I don't think the roster, like a Jorge Soler, right? Soler is going to have to be counterbalanced with a Nolan Schanuel type. Look at Ernie Clement from the Blue Jays going 4 for 4 against the Yankees the other night. I know they lost, but they eliminated the Yankees last night. Putting the ball in play, 4 for 4. Nerdy Ernie Clement, right, is doing all the things that this Angel team needs. And so if Albert can get Arte to get Perry to get those guys like a Clement that are out there, then I think it's going to fundamentally change the team. I don't think it's too late for guys like Logan O'Hoppe. I don't think it's too late for guys like Joe Adell. Does Joe Adell hit 37 bombs? No, but you said it the other day. I'd take 30 bombs. I'd take 28 bombs if it meant that he's hitting 260, right? Yeah. And so I think that's the compromise. Like you mentioned with Brandon Marsh, 16 home runs with the Angels, but like a 240-something average, and now he's up there in the 280s. Maybe not as much power, maybe not as many home runs, but it serves the entire team. And I think that's what's been missing. And after what we discussed yesterday, it's very clear what Perry Minasian has been emphasizing. So what's going to give? What's going to give is Albert's going to get the guys that he wants. And if the way he managed the team and the emphasis they placed on base percentage and walks and batting average comes through and is clear to his managing style, then I think he's going to get what he wants. And I don't think Perry Minasian is going to get the same type of team that he's been allowing to happen over the last few years. So if Albert gets hired, I think I have some hope, Mike. I think I have some hope that the roster construction could look a little bit different. I think I have some hope that Albert could bend the ear of Arte Moreno a little bit. And then Perry is just in the drive-thru at Starbucks and making the deals that Arte and Albert want him to make.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now, for your next listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until the World Series champion is crowned. You can find Game Night on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, tomorrow you're going to want to connect with us on social media. Well, right now you're going to want to connect with us on social media at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Rose, because tomorrow it's a Fan Mail Friday, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, we would love to hear from you and your thoughts. And if you agree with our conclusions about Albert Pujols, and even if you disagree, that's invited as well. We would love to hear your thoughts. Who would you bring in? What do the stats from Albert Pujols' managerial season with this Dominican team and winning the championship, what does it say to you. We would love to hear your thoughts on that. You can also call our voicemail line. It's in the episode description, and leave us a 30-second to 1-minute voicemail. We would love to hear from you tomorrow for Locked On Angels. It's Fan Mail Friday.
Yeah, we've been doing enough talking this week. It's time for you guys to talk to us. All right, friends, we hope you'll come back and join us. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here on Friday.
Perry wants to be in the room where
I want a venti cappuccino, no phone.